Hello everyone, I'm Chris, and this is a full recap of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, released in 2018. If you end up enjoying this video and want to see more from us, then make sure to click that subscribe button and click the bell to know anytime we upload a new video. With the release of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse coming up soon on June 2nd, we finally have the opportunity to take a look back at one of my favorite movies of all time, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. A consensus top 3 Spider-Man movie and top 10 superhero movie ever, that we've talked about a bit in the past when ranking every Spider-Man movie to date. So if you want to hear more of what we thought of the film, you should check that video out, which will be linked in the description. It's clear that many fans felt the same way as we do about this film though, as during its time in theaters, Into the Spider-Verse quadrupled its $90 million budget, racking in $375 million worldwide at the box office. And critics also seemed to enjoy it, as it later received the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature Film, making it one of only 7 non-Disney or Pixar films to win said award. And thankfully, everything that's come out about the sequel so far has me believing that it'll find just as much, if not more success than the first, as we continue to follow Miles Morales and watch as he's taken to unimaginable places throughout the Spider-Verse. Before we get into our recap though, make sure if you haven't already to go watch Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, as it'll be linked in the description so you can enjoy it for yourself. But if you have seen it and are just looking for a quick refresher, then you've come to the right place. The movie opens with a narration from Peter Parker of Earth 1610, who after being bit by a radioactive spider, has spent the last 10 years as New York's one and only Spider-Man. Throughout his introduction, Peter takes us through some important parts of his backstory, such as his Uncle Ben's speech before he died, in which he taught him that with great power comes great responsibility. And he also references events similar to those that took place in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy, released from 2002 to 2007, including when Spider-Man managed to stop a moving train in Spider-Man 2, his upside-down kiss with Mary Jane in Spider-Man, when Dr. Octopus threw a car through the window of a cafe in Spider-Man 2, and Peter's dance in Spider-Man 3. Before he then wraps up his intro so we can head over to Brooklyn, where we're introduced to a kid named Miles Morales as he listens to Sunflower by Post Malone and Sway Lee while getting ready for his 3rd week at his new high school, Brooklyn Visions Academy. He doesn't feel this new school really suits him though, and he expresses this feeling to his father, police officer and Spider-Man hater, Jefferson Davis. But his dad claims this is a great opportunity for him and refuses to let him pass on it. So Miles instead tries to intentionally flunk out of the school, which one of his teachers quickly recognizes, so in response to his attempt to quit, she assigns him a personal essay about what kind of person he wants to be. But rather than getting started on that, Miles leaves his dorm to see his uncle, Aaron Davis, who Miles' father didn't speak too highly of when his name came up earlier. Aaron appears to be a great uncle though, even if he may influence Miles to break the rules from time to time, as he does now by taking him to an abandoned subway tunnel so they can graffiti some of Miles' new artwork, during which a spider that appears to be radioactive crawls up Miles' body, although it doesn't make itself visible to him until after he finishes his graffiti, as while he's taking a photo of it, the spider crawls out of his hand and bites him, resulting in Miles not thinking much of the bite, nonchalantly whacking and killing it. Despite the bite, nothing too out of the ordinary takes place the next morning, although Miles does notice he's grown quite a bit taller overnight. But things quickly become weird once in school when he runs into his classmate and crush, Gwanda, who he met earlier during their physics class, and who Miles told a little bit about to Aaron, who in turn advised him to use his signature shoulder touch to get her attention. So Miles attempts the move here, but it doesn't seem to have the desired effect, and things then take a turn for the worst when Miles finds himself unable to remove his hand and unintentionally gets it stuck to her hair, eventually forcing her to shave half of it off. Following this awkward interaction, Miles is then confronted by the school's security guard, who calls him out for sneaking out of his room last night, prompting Miles to run off into the nearest closet, which actually turns out to be the security guard's office, and while trying to hold the door closed, Miles gets himself stuck to it, and continues flopping around the walls until he eventually falls out the window, and finds himself now sticking around the outside of the building, before eventually managing to make it to his room, inside of which he stumbles upon his roommate's True Life Tales of Spider-Man comic book, with a cover inspired by Spider-Man's first ever actual comic book appearance in Amazing Fantasy 15, published in 1962. And through the events within this Tales of Spider-Man comic, which mirror what Miles just went through, Miles realizes that he now may also be Spider-Man. To get confirmation on this, he heads back to the subway tunnel where he was bit to find the spider, and it turns out it really was radioactive, as he finds it glitching extraordinarily, before his spidey sense then begins to alert him of danger nearby, which is soon revealed to be the result of a battle between Spider-Man and the Green Goblin further underground, as Spider-Man's attempting to stop Goblin from activating a particle accelerator called a super collider to open a portal to another dimension. As their battle wears on, Miles finds himself inadvertently stuck in the thick of it, but fortunately, before any harm can befall him, he's found and saved by Spider-Man, who's able to sense that Miles is also a spider person like him, And recognizing Miles' fear and confusion, Peter offers to train him, although after he destroys the Super Collider, which he again attempts to do, but he's intercepted by another of his adversaries, the Prowler, who along with Green Goblin is revealed to be working for the Kingpin, Wilson Fisk, who's had this machine built so he can bring a version of his wife, Vanessa, and son Richard from within the multiverse to his universe, as their variants in this universe had died some time ago after witnessing a battle between Fisk and Spider-Man for the first time, frightening them, and as they rushed out of there, they ended up getting into a fatal car accident. So with the Prowler and Goblin holding Spider-Man at bay, Fisk activates the machine, but it quickly begins to overload as Goblin, after Peter momentarily managed to break free of his grasp, begins shoving him into the path of the Collider's beam, resulting in the machine exploding, killing Goblin and severely injuring Peter, who's then found by Miles, and Peter, unable to get up, hands him the override key and makes him promise to destroy the machine no matter what happens, before quickly having him run off as Kingpin, along with the Prowler, and another of his henchmen Tombstone approaches, and Fisk ultimately kills Peter himself. Immediately following Peter's murder, Kingpin also spots Miles looking on from afar, so he sends the Prowler after him, but Miles fortunately manages to avoid him as he escapes the subway into his parents' house, who, recognizing he's greatly upset, allow him to stay the night. Over the next 24 hours, the crushing news of Spider-Man's death is covered across all forms of media, and later prompts a huge press conference from Peter Parker's wife, Mary Jane Watson, which Miles attends wearing a Spider-Man costume he bought from a store owner played by Stan Lee, the co-creator of some of Marvel's biggest heroes, including the likes of the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, Hulk, Thor, and of course Spider-Man. After listening to MJ's speech, Miles realizes it's now his duty to complete Peter's mission and stop Fisk. So in preparation to do that, he attempts to begin his training by jumping from one rooftop to another, but he ends up failing in his attempt and comes crashing to the ground, right onto the override key Peter had gave him, and destroying it. So believing he's completely failed, Miles goes to Peter's grave and apologizes, but once there, he's approached by an unseen figure, causing him to panic and resulting in him unintentionally electrocuting and knocking out who's revealed to be another variant of Spider-Man from within the multiverse, Peter B. Parker from Earth 616. This Peter then takes us through a narration of his life as Spider-Man, although it isn't as positive as the previous Peters, as Peter B. Parker had found himself with no money, had lost his Aunt May, and got divorced with MJ, whose desire to have kids scared him and resulted in him pushing her away. Through his narration, we also learn how he got transported here, as when Goblin shoved Peter into the Collider's path earlier, it resulted in another dimension Spider-Man being sent here. When Peter regains consciousness, he finds himself strapped to a punching bag by Miles, who eventually realizes Peter's from another dimension, so he asks him to train him like the other Peters said he would. But this Peter doesn't care about anything other than getting back home, so he just takes the override key and prepares to go find the Super Collider. But since the drive was broken earlier, he'll now have to infiltrate Alchemax Labs to steal the necessary information so he can make another one. For this mission, Peter, after some guilt tripping from Miles, decides to bring him along so he can teach him some things along the way. Although there are some things Miles is revealed to be capable of that Peter can't teach, such as his ability to make himself invisible, which he doesn't fully understand but subconsciously manages to do after sneaking into the CEO of Alchemax's office, who re-enters shortly after their arrival. So Peter tries to keep her distracted while an invisible Miles downloads the files they need, but things take an unexpected turn when the woman, after analyzing Peter's multiversal nature, reveals herself to actually be Dr. Olivia Octavius, also known as Doc Ock, and attacks him, prompting him and Miles to rush out of there with her computer and giving Miles his first opportunity to learn how to use Spider-Man's web shooters, which although struggling at first, he does eventually manage to get the hang of with Peter's help. As they're swinging away though, Peter begins glitching as he had multiple times earlier as a result of his arrival in this different dimension, and this results in them losing their grasp on the computer, but just as Doc Ock regains possession of it, it's once again taken from her, this time by another Spider-Person of Earth 65 named Gwen Stacy, revealed to be the real name of Miles' classmate and crush from earlier. We're then once again taken through a narration, this time of Gwen's life as Spider-Woman, and we learn that her and Peter Parker were best friends in her universe before his unfortunate death, which she was unable to prevent, and we also see that she'd been transported here the same way Peter B. Parker was, although her multiversal travel sent her a week into the past. Once having escaped Doc Ock and her goons, the trio of Spider People head over to this universe's Peter's Aunt May's house, and she quickly recognizes that this Peter isn't the one she knows, as she'd already encountered other Spider People from the multiverse earlier, who she takes the trio down into her Peter's underground base to meet, with those Spider People being Spider-Man Noir from Earth 90214, Penny Parker, who has a psychic link with a spider who lives inside her father's robot from Earth 14512, and Peter Porker, aka Spider-Ham, from Earth 8311. These three, just like Gwen and Peter, plan on using the Super Collider to return home, but in order to save the multiverse, they've realized that one of them will also have to stay behind to destroy the machine. At least that's what they think before learning that Miles could potentially handle that for them, although they're pretty skeptical of his abilities. So they put him to the test to see if he has the willpower to be Spider-Man, but he fails to really prove himself and exits the base, eventually making his way to his Uncle Aaron's apartment, who's currently out of town. And Miles, needing someone to talk to, writes a letter for him to read when he gets back. That's soon interrupted though by the arrival of the Prowler, who Miles fortunately manages to keep himself hidden from by making himself invisible out of fear. And with it appearing no one else is in the apartment, the Prowler removes his mask and reveals himself to be Miles' Uncle Aaron. As Miles climbs out the window, his movements are spotted by Aaron, who once again chases after him, but Miles appears to get him off his trail, so he rushes over to Aunt May's house to inform the others of what he'd learned. But it turns out he'd been followed here by the Prowler, Doc Ock, Tombstone, and another Spider-Man adversary, Scorpion, who the Spider Gang are forced to brawl throughout the house and neighborhood with, although they're unable to prevent Prowler from getting his hands on Miles. So in an attempt to stop him, Miles takes off his mask, prompting a shocked Aaron to remove his as well, before removing his hand from around Miles' throat, prompting Kingpin to shoot Aaron through the chest. Before he can shoot Miles as well though, Peter arrives to take Fist down, allowing Miles to swing into a nearby alley with the wounded Aaron, who in his final moments apologizes for letting him down.
You're the best of all of us, Miles. You're on your way. Just keep going.
After he passes, a police officer arrives on the scene, revealed to be Miles' father, but Miles manages to avoid him by turning himself invisible and swinging away, leaving Jefferson to mourn the loss of his brother, which he believes was this new Spider-Man's doing, so he sends out an APB for his arrest. Distraught, Miles returns to his dorm room, where he's soon met by the rest of the Spider Gang, who each comfort him by sharing their experiences of loss, although comforting him wasn't the only reason they'd come here, but rather to say goodbye, as Peter explains that they don't believe he's ready for the mission. So while the others return home through the collider, Peter, despite knowing that staying here too long will kill him, is gonna stay behind to destroy it, which Miles is completely against, but it's no longer up to him, as Peter webs him up in his chair and takes the drive from him.
When will I know I'm ready?
You won't. It's a leap of faith. That's all it is, Miles. A leap of faith.
Following his and the others' exit, Miles gets a knock at the door from his father, who appears to be deeply affected by his brother's death, despite them having grown apart over the years. And from behind Miles' closed door, his father apologizes for being so hard on him, and claims he'll support him in whatever he wants to do because he knows he'll be great, before then telling him that he loves him and exiting. His father's words though push Miles to finally realize his full potential, as he breaks free of Peter's webs by accessing his electric pulse, and after getting some web shooters of his own and a suit with the help of Aunt May, Miles leaps across rooftops and swings his way to the collider, which Fisk and Doc Ock have once again activated, causing reality to begin warping. The rest of the Spider Gang is there as well, and upon Miles' arrival, they're able to gain the upper hand against and eventually take out Doc Ock, Scorpion, and Tombstone, before then going to shut down the machine as their multiple dimensions continue to begin crashing into one another. So with Miles set to destroy the collider, Penny Parker, Noir Peter Parker, Peter Porker, and Gwen return home through it. But before Peter can leave too, Kingpin begins approaching them through the interdimensional particles, so Peter goes to hold him off while Miles shuts it down, but Miles refuses to let him stay.
How do I know I'm not gonna mess it up again?
You won't.
Right. It's a leap of faith.
Peter then returns home while Miles takes on Kingpin, who holds control of most of their brawl and looks like he'll be able to kill Miles. But after Miles sees his father in the distance, who'd arrived on the scene awaiting backup, and hearing him cheer Spider-Man on, he gets back to his feet and uses his uncle's signature shoulder touch to send Kingpin flying back before launching him into the deactivation button to destroy the machine. Following his victory, Miles as Spider-Man approaches his father and gives him a long-awaited hug, before leaving Kingpin and his goons to be arrested by the police. And to close the film, we're taken through another narration, this time from Miles, as he takes us through what he's been up to since the battle. And we also see a bit of what the rest of the Spider Gang's been up to, including Peter B. Parker's reunion with MJ, before the movie ends with Miles laying in bed listening to Sunflower as he's contacted by Gwen across dimensions. In a post-credits scene, we're introduced to another variant of Spider-Man, Miguel O'Hara, also known as Spider-Man 2099. As well as his holographic companion, Lila, who's helped him create a gizmo that'll allow him to make an autonomous multiverse jump, which upon the device's completion, he immediately does, jumping to Earth 67, revealed to be where the events of the Spider-Man animated series, released from 1967 to 1970, took place. And there he quickly encounters that universe's Spider-Man, who he asks to come with him, but instead ends up in a pointing argument. And that was our full recap of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. If you enjoyed the video or found it helpful in any way, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And also, let us know in the comments below where you'd rank Into the Spider-Verse amongst the rest of Spider-Man's feature films. But once again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.